Asterisk the aliens dawn. T expected the Deathworlders to answer their distress call. Asterisk the research ship Gentle Current floated in empty space like a dying star. Its blue-green lights flickered weakly against the endless darkness. Inside the ship, Chief Science Officer Cassara pressed her for webbed hands against the control panel. Her large, dark eyes reflected the warning lights that blinked red across every screen. Life support at 40%, announced her assistant, Nimori, from across the bridge. The young Zalathi's voice shook with fear. Oxygen recyclers are failing faster than we calculated. Cassara's gills fluttered rapidly as she tried to stay calm. The Zalathi were not built for emergencies like this. Their species had evolved in the peaceful depths of their homeworld's vast oceans. They were scientists, healers, and philosophers. They had never learned to fight against death itself. How long do we have? Cassara asked, though she already knew the answer would not be good. Maybe 3 days. If we reduce activity to minimum levels, Nimori replied. She was barely past her first century of life, still young by Zalathi standards. Her bioluminescent patches along her arms pulsed with nervous energy. 3 days. Cassara looked around the bridge at her crew of 12. All of them were brilliant. Minds, the best scientists their world had produced. They had been traveling to the Endorian Research Station to present their breakthrough work on neural regeneration. The discovery could help countless species across the galaxy recover from brain injuries that were currently considered permanent. Now all of that knowledge would die with them in the cold vacuum of space. What caused them? Hyperdrive failure? Cassara asked their engineer, Velter. The elderly Zalathi's skin had turned pale blue with stress. The quantum core destabilized when we passed through that strange gravitational field. I have never seen anything like it. The field seemed to exist where no planet or star should be. Cassara nodded slowly. They had detected the gravitational anomaly too late to avoid it. Now they were trapped in its pull, unable to escape to hyperspace. Their long-range sensors showed they were near a rogue planet, a world that had been thrown out of its solar system long ago and now wandered alone through space. Send the distress signal, Cassara decided. Full emergency broadcast on all galactic frequencies. Nimori's fingers danced over her console. Signal broadcasting now. I am including our species requirements and ship specifications. The message that went out into space was detailed and precise, as all Zalathi communications were. It explained their situation, their location, and most importantly, their biological needs. The Zalathi could only survive in very specific conditions. The gravity could not exceed 0.3 times standard galactic measurement. The temperature had to stay between 278 and 293 Kelvin. The atmosphere needed to maintain exact humidity and pressure levels. Warning to all responding vessels, Nimori read as she typed. Rescue attempt must use environmental suits rated for Gentle World species. Zalathi biology cannot withstand harsh environmental conditions. Repeat, only Gentle World rated equipment should be used for rescue operations. The message also included their research data, compressed and attached to the signal. If they died here, at least their work might survive to help others. After sending the signal, they could only wait. The nearest Galactic Council world was 6 days away at maximum speed. Even if someone received their message immediately and left to help them right away, they would not arrive in time. Maybe a trading ship will be closer, Nimori said hopefully. Or a research vessel like ours. Cassara wanted to believe that, but she knew the chances were small. This region of space was far from the major trade routes. Most species avoided areas with gravitational anomalies like the one that had trapped them. As the hours passed, the ship grew colder. They had shut down all non-essential systems to save power. The crew gathered in the main research lab, which was easier to heat than the larger bridge. They shared stories of their homeworld and talked about their families. Velter told them about his granddaughter, who was just starting her education in marine biology. She wants to study the deep ocean trenches where the ancient life forms still live, he said with a sad smile. I promised to take her on her first research dive when I returned. Nimori spoke about her research project on coral genetics. I was so close to understanding how they regenerate damaged tissue. The breakthrough was right there. I could feel it. Kessara listened to them all and felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. These were good people, brilliant minds who had so much more to give to the galaxy. The neural regeneration research alone could help millions of beings who had suffered brain injuries in accidents or conflicts. On the second day, their food recyclers began to malfunction. The temperature dropped another 2 degrees, forcing them to huddle together for warmth. Kessara made the difficult decision to reduce their rations to make them last longer. Though she knew it would make them weaker, maybe we should record our final messages, suggested Dr. Murad, their medical officer. For our families? The crew agreed, though none of them wanted to admit they were giving up hope. One by one, they recorded personal messages and scientific notes for those who would find them. Kessara waited until last, when her turn came. She looked into the recording device and spoke slowly. This is Chief Science Officer Kessara of the research vessel Gentle Current. If you are hearing this message, then we did not survive our mission. We were trapped by a gravitational anomaly while carrying important research on neural regeneration. She paused, collecting her thoughts. We sent a distress signal, but we know the chances of rescue are small. We are too far from the shipping lanes, and our biological requirements make rescue difficult even under normal circumstances. Kessara looked around at her crew, who were listening quietly. I want whoever finds this to know that we were not afraid at the end. We were scientists, and we understood that exploration always carries risks. We only regret that our research will not reach those who need it. She was about to end the recording when Nemori suddenly looked up from her console. Her bioluminescent patches were flashing with excitement. Chief Kessara, Nemori called out. I am receiving a response to our distress signal. The entire crew turned to look at her. Kessara felt her heart skip a beat. Who is responding? Nemori's excitement quickly changed to confusion as she read the message. The signal. Identification. It says they are humans. A cold silence fell over the bridge. Every Zalathi in the galaxy knew about humans. They were the Deathworlders, the terrifying species that came from a planet so dangerous that most galactic species could not even land on it safely. That cannot be correct, Velter said. Check the signal again. But Nemori was already shaking her head. The message is clear. A human cargo vessel called the Iron Will is responding to our distress call. They say they are 3 days away and coming to help us. Kessara felt her blood turn cold. She had heard the stories about humans. They came from a world of crushing gravity, extreme temperatures, and toxic storms. They were incredibly strong and aggressive, evolved from predator species that had fought their way to the top of their planet's food chain. What would happen when these terrifying creatures tried to rescue them? Would the humans even understand how fragile the Zalathi were? Would they accidentally kill them while trying to help? But as she looked around at her dying crew, Kessara realized they had no choice. The humans might be dangerous, but death from system failure was certain. Send a response, she ordered. Tell them we accept their help, but warn them again about our environmental needs. As Nemori composed the reply, Kessara wondered if they were about to be saved or if they had just invited their own destruction. In 3 days, they would find out what it meant when the galaxy's most feared Deathworlders came to the rescue. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the cargo ship Ironwell, staring at the distress signal that had just appeared on her communications console. The message was clear and detailed, explaining the situation of a stranded research vessel, filled with scientists from the Zalathi species. Marcus, come take a look at this. She called to her engineer, who was working on repairs to their main cargo bay doors. Marcus Webb climbed up from the lower deck, wiping grease from his hands with an old cloth. He was a tall man with kind eyes and hands that could fix almost anything. What do you have? Captain, stranded ship, about 3 days from our current position. Their life support is failing. Sarah pointed to the screen. There's a Zalathi research vessel carrying some kind of medical breakthrough. Dr. Yuki Tanaka looked up from her medical station where she had been organizing supplies. She was small and precise in her movements. with the steady hands of someone who had performed surgery in zero gravity. Scifi. I've read about them. They're very fragile. Their biology is completely different from most galactic species. How different? Asked Alex Rodriguez, their navigator. He was young but skilled, with an amazing ability to find his way through even the most complicated star systems. They need very specific environmental conditions to survive, Dr. Tanaka explained. Low gravity, narrow temperature range, special atmospheric requirements. They evolved in ocean depths on their homeworld. Sarah read through the message again, paying attention to the warnings about rescue procedures. They're asking for help, but they're also warning that only Gentle World species should attempt rescue. Gentle World. Marcus raised an eyebrow. What does that make us? Alex laughed. According to the Galactic Classification System, we're Class 12 Death World inhabitants. Earth is considered one of the most dangerous planets in known space. The crew fell silent for a moment. They all knew how other species viewed humans. The galaxy saw them as dangerous creatures from a world of extreme conditions. Most aliens were afraid of human strength, endurance, and what they called aggressive tendencies. So they probably don't want our help, Marcus said quietly. Sarah looked at the message again. The research vessel had less than 3 days of life support remaining. She checked her star charts and calculated the distance to the nearest galactic council world. Even the fastest ships would take at least 6 days to reach the stranded Scifi. We're the only ones who can reach them in time, she said finally. Captain, Dr. Tanaka said carefully, they might be more afraid of us than of dying. Humans have a reputation in the galaxy. Sarah had heard the stories. Tales of human traders who could lift cargo that required machines for other species. Stories of human soldiers who fought in conditions that would kill most aliens instantly. Reports of human ships that flew through asteroid fields and radiation. Storms that other vessels would never attempt to navigate. Most of it was true, but not in the way the galaxy understood it. Humans weren't monsters. They were just adapted to survive on a world that was harsher than most species could imagine. Send them a response, Sarah decided. Tell them we're coming to help. Alex moved to the communications console and began typing. What should I say about us being humans? Tell them the truth. We're a human cargo vessel, and we're the closest ship that can reach them in time. As Alex sent the message, Sarah began calculating their course. They would need to change direction and push their engines harder than normal, but the iron will was built tough. She could handle it. The response from the Scifi came back within an hour. Sarah read it and felt her heart sink. The message was polite, but filled with fear. The Scifi were grateful for their offer, but deeply concerned about the safety of both crews. Listen to this, Sarah said, reading aloud. We appreciate your offer of assistance, but we must warn you that Scifi physiology cannot withstand the environmental conditions that humans consider normal. Our species requires gravity no higher than 0.3 standard, temperatures between 278 and 293 Kelvin, and atmospheric pressure maintained within very specific limits. She continued reading. We understand that human biology is adapted to much harsher conditions. We fear that any rescue attempt might result in accidental injury to our crew. Perhaps it would be better to wait for a more suitable rescue vessel. Marcus shook his head. They're more afraid of us than of dying. Can you blame them? Dr. Tanaka said, from their perspective, we're creatures who live in crushing gravity in extreme temperatures. They probably think we'll accidentally kill them just by trying to help. Sarah looked around at her crew. These were good people who had chosen to spend their lives helping others. Marcus had once worked for 18 straight hours to repair a life support system on a mining station. Dr. Tanaka had saved dozens of lives in emergency situations across the galaxy. Alex had guided ships through dangerous space storms when other navigators had given up. Send another message, Sarah said. Tell them we understand their concerns. But we're coming anyway. We'll figure out how to do this safely, Alex typed. Quickly, should I mention our experience with different species? Yes? Tell them Dr. Tanaka has medical training with multiple alien physiologies. Tell them Marcus has experience adapting human technology for other species. Tell them we won't let them die. The message was sent, and they waited for a response. When it came, it was even more desperate than before. Please reconsider, the message read. We have transmitted our complete research data with this message. If our rescue is not possible, at least our work can survive to help others. We do not wish to cause harm to your crew or ours through a rescue attempt that cannot succeed. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest, not at the Scifi, but at the reputation that made them so afraid. Humans had been exploring space for less than 2 centuries, but they had already become known throughout the galaxy as dangerous beings to be avoided. They're sending us their research, Dr. Tanaka said. Looking at the data that had arrived with the message, it's about neural regeneration. This could help millions of beings across the galaxy recover from brain injuries, all the more reason to save them, Sarah said. Set course for their position, maximum speed. Marcus headed for the engine room. I'll push the engines as hard as they'll go. We'll get there in time, as the iron will change course and accelerate it toward the stranded research vessel. Sarah sent one final message to the Scifi. We are coming to help you. Whether you think it's safe or not, we won't let you die alone in space. We'll find a way to make this work. The response came back quickly. We pray to our ancestors that you know what you are doing. We will prepare for your arrival. Sarah smiled grimly. The Scifi had no idea what humans were really capable of. They saw only the reputation, the stories of dangerous Deathworlders from a hostile planet. They didn't understand that the same harsh conditions that made humans seem frightening had also made them incredibly good at solving impossible problems. 3 days, she said to her crew. We have 3 days to figure out how to save a ship full of aliens who think we're going to accidentally kill them. No problem. Marcus said from the engine room. We've done harder things than this. Dr. Tanaka was already pulling up medical files on Scifi physiology. I'll need to prepare special equipment for their environmental needs. Alex plotted their course through the gravitational anomaly that had trapped the research vessel. The navigation will be tricky, but I can get us there safely, as the iron will race through space toward their destination. Sarah felt the familiar determination that had carried her through countless dangerous situations. The galaxy might fear humans, but they had never seen what humans could accomplish when they were determined to save lives. The Scifi were about to learn that being a Deathworlder didn't make you a monster. Sometimes it made you the only hope for salvation in a cold and dangerous universe. The iron will drop out of hyperspace near the rogue planet with a flash of blue light. Captain Sarah Chen immediately felt the pull of the massive gravitational field that had trapped the Scifi research vessel. On her main screen, she could see the gentle current drifting helplessly in the planet's shadow. There she is, Alex Rodriguez said from his navigation station. The gravitational readings are incredible. I've never seen anything like this. Sarah studied the readings on her console. The rogue planet was generating gravitational waves that twisted space around it in impossible patterns. Most ships would have been torn apart trying to navigate through it. Even now, she could feel the iron will being pulled toward the dark world. Can we get close enough for rescue? She asked. Alex worked his calculations quickly. Yes, but it won't be easy. The gravitational field is unstable. We'll have to use manual controls for the final approach. Through the communications system, they could hear the weak signal from the Scifi ship. Chief Science Officer Kasara's voice came through clearly, though it sounded tired and strained. Human vessel Iron Will, we are grateful you have arrived, but we must warn you again about the dangers. Our ship's systems are failing rapidly. Life support is now at 20% and dropping. Sarah grabbed the microphone. We understand, Gentle Current. We're going to get you out of here. Just hold on a little longer. Dr. Yuki Tanaka was already working at her medical station, preparing equipment for the Scifi crew. She had spent the entire 3-day journey studying their biology and modifying human medical tools to work with their unique physiology. I've set up a special medical bay for them, she reported. Temperature-controlled, low-gravity simulation, and atmospheric processors to match their homeworld conditions. Marcus Webb was suiting up in the cargo bay, checking his equipment one final time. His environmental suit was modified with extra cooling systems and radiation shielding. On his back was a pack filled with tools and spare parts. Marcus, are you sure about this? Sarah asked through the communication system. The radiation levels around the planet are off the charts. Marcus smiled inside his helmet. Captain, I've worked in radiation storms before. This is just another day at the office. What Marcus didn't tell the others was that the radiation levels here would kill most galactic species within minutes, even with his protective suit. He was taking a serious risk, but the Scifi needed help, and he was the only one who could fix their failing systems. Beginning even now, Marcus announced as he stepped out of the airlock. On the bridge of the gentle current, the Scifi crew watched in horror as Marcus propelled himself through space. Using his suit's thrusters, the space around the rogue planet was filled with deadly radiation and gravitational distortions that should have torn him apart. This is impossible, Velter whispered. No being can survive in those conditions. But Marcus was not just surviving, he was working. He reached the hull of the Scifi ship and began examining their damaged systems. With tools that seemed primitive compared to galactic technology, yet somehow, he quickly identified the problems and began making repairs. Your oxygen recycling system has 3 major failures, Marcus reported through his radio. The primary processor is clogged, the secondary backup has a power coupling problem, and your emergency system never activated because of a simple switch malfunction. Kessara stared at her screens in amazement. Their own engineers had spent days trying to understand what was wrong with their systems. This human had diagnosed all their problems in minutes. How is this possible? She asked. Marcus was already working on the first repair. Sometimes you need fresh eyes to see a problem. Plus, I've worked on a lot of different ship types over the years. What he didn't mention was that human engineers were trained to work with whatever materials they had available. On Earth, resources were limited and conditions were harsh. Humans had learned to fix complex problems with simple tools and creative thinking. Within an hour, Marcus had repaired the primary oxygen recycler, using spare parts from his toolkit and some components he had removed from less critical systems on the Scifi ship. He rerouted power cables, bypassed damaged circuits, and even created a temporary patch for a hull breach using emergency sealant. Oxygen levels are rising, Nimori reported with excitement. The recycler is working at 90% efficiency. But Marcus wasn't finished. He moved to the ship's power systems and began working on the failing generators. The Scifi power technology was based on controlled fusion reactions. That required extremely precise conditions. One small mistake could cause a dangerous explosion. Please be careful, Kessara warned. Those systems are very sensitive. I understand, Marcus replied calmly. I've worked on fusion systems before. The truth was that Marcus had never seen this exact type of fusion technology, but he understood the basic principles. All fusion systems worked on similar ideas, whether they were human, Scifi, or from any other species. The key was understanding how energy flowed through the system and finding ways to make it work more efficiently as Marcus worked. The Scifi crew began to realize that their assumptions about humans were wrong. They had expected a brutal, clumsy species that would cause more damage than help. Instead, they were watching a skilled engineer who worked with precision and intelligence. Temperature controls are back online, Vilter reported. The fusion generator is running at stable levels. Meanwhile, on the Iron Will, Dr. Tanaka was making her own preparations. She had modified the ship's medical bay to create a perfect environment for Scifi physiology. The gravity was reduced to 0.3 standard, the temperature was carefully controlled, and the atmospheric processors were producing the exact mixture of gases the Scifi needed to breathe. Medical bay is ready, she reported to Sarah. I've also prepared emergency medical supplies in case any of them are injured during the transfer. Sarah was impressed by her crew's quick thinking and adaptability. This was why she had chosen to work with humans, even though other species often avoided them. When faced with impossible problems, humans found ways to make the impossible work. Marcus, how much longer do you need? Sarah asked. Just finishing up the last system, Marcus replied. I'm installing a backup power coupling that should prevent this type of failure in the future. As Marcus worked, young Nemori asked a question that had been troubling her. Human Marcus, why are you risking your life to help us? Your species has a reputation for being aggressive and dangerous. Marcus paused in his work and looked through the ship's window at the Scifi crew. That's exactly why I'm helping you, because that reputation is wrong. Humans aren't monsters. We're just people who happen to come from a tough world, he continued, working as he spoke. Where I come from, we believe that if you can help someone, you should help them. It doesn't matter if they're human or alien, friend or stranger. Life is precious, and we don't let people die when we can prevent it. Kestara felt her understanding of humans shift completely. The galaxy had told her that humans were dangerous predators from a death world, but this human was risking his life to save strangers, working in conditions that would kill most beings, and doing it all with kindness and skill. All systems repaired, Marcus finally announced. Your ship should be stable for at least another week, maybe longer if you're careful with power usage. As Marcus prepared to return to the Iron Will, Velter spoke up. Human Marcus, we owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You have saved our lives. No debt necessary. Marcus replied, just doing what anyone would do. But as Marcus jetted back to his ship through the deadly radiation field, the Scifi crew knew that what they had witnessed was not what anyone would do. They had seen something extraordinary. A being from a death world who used his harsh world adaptations not to harm others, but to save them. The rescue was far from over, but the Scifi were beginning to understand that their saviors were not the monsters they had expected. They were something much more remarkable, heroes who had turned their world's dangers into tools for helping others. The evacuation began at dawn, though dawn and dusk had no meaning in the shadow of the rogue planet. Captain Sarah Chen gripped the controls of the Iron Will as she maneuvered the ship closer to the gentle current. The gravitational forces around them were like invisible hands trying to tear both ships apart. Gravitational stress at 60% of hull tolerance. Alex Rodriguez reported from his navigation station. His fingers moved quickly across his instruments, calculating safe distances and approach angles in his head faster than the ship's computer could process them. I can hold her steady, Sarah said, her jaw tight with concentration. But we need to work fast. The plan was ambitious and dangerous. They would connect the two ships using a makeshift transfer tube built from cargo containers and emergency supplies. No species in the galaxy had ever attempted something like this. Under such extreme conditions, Marcus Webb was already in the cargo bay, working with tools and materials that should never have been used for this purpose. He had taken 3 large shipping containers and was connecting them end to end, sealing the joints with emergency hull patches and industrial adhesive. This is completely insane, he muttered to himself as he worked. But it might just work. On the bridge of the gentle current, the Scifi crew watched the humans work with growing amazement. Chief Science Officer Kestara could see Marcus through the viewports, moving around in the deadly radiation field as if it were a normal workplace. How is he still alive? Nemori asked. The radiation levels should have killed him hours ago. Human biology is adapted to much higher radiation tolerance. Dr. Yuki Tanaka explained over the communication system. We evolved in a world with a thin atmosphere and regular radiation storms. What seems deadly to you is just uncomfortable to us. But even Dr. Tanaka was worried. The radiation levels here were extreme. Even by human standards, Marcus was pushing the limits of what his body could handle, and his protective suit was starting to show signs of damage. Marcus, your suit readings are getting dangerous, she warned. You need to finish quickly. Almost done, Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the pain he was feeling. Just need to connect the final seal. The transfer tube was a masterpiece of impossible engineering. Marcus had created a pressurized tunnel using shipping containers, emergency airlocks, and spare parts from both ships. The entire structure was held together by industrial clamps, emergency welding, and what could only be described as stubborn determination. Tube is sealed and pressurized. Marcus announced, ready for evacuation. Sarah began the delicate process of aligning the ships. The gravitational forces made this incredibly difficult. She had to use manual controls because the ship's computer couldn't calculate the complex forces. At work around the rogue planet, Alex, I need constant navigation updates, she called out. Gravitational field is shifting, Alex replied, his eyes never leaving his instruments, just heading by to Degrees Port. Watch for the resonance wave in 30 seconds. Sarah made the adjustments without question. Alex had an intuitive understanding of space navigation that amazed even experienced pilots. He could feel the movement of gravitational fields and predict their changes with uncanny accuracy. The docking process took 2 hours, 2 hours of constant adjustments, fighting against forces that wanted to crush both ships. But finally, the makeshift tunnel was connected and sealed between the vessels. Connection secure, Marcus reported. Beginning evacuation now. The first Zalathi to enter the transfer tube was Dr. Murayat, their medical officer. She moved slowly and carefully, her forearms trembling with fear and exhaustion. The tube was larger than necessary, designed to accommodate the Zalathi's need for space and their aquatic movement patterns. Temperature and atmosphere are perfect, she reported with surprise. How did you know our exact requirements? Dr. Tanaka smiled as she monitored the medical readings. I studied your physiology. For 3 days straight, I wanted to make sure we got everything right, but then disaster struck. As the fifth Zalathi, young Nemori, was moving through the tube, she suddenly collapsed. Her bioluminescent patches flickered weakly, and her breathing became rapid and shallow. She's going into shock, Dr. Mariah called out. The stress of the evacuation is too much for her system. Dr. Tanaka didn't hesitate. She grabbed her medical kit and rushed into the transfer tube, even though it meant exposing herself to the same gravitational stresses that were affecting Nemori. I need to operate immediately, she said, kneeling beside the young Zalathi. The stress has caused her secondary heart to malfunction. Kestara watched in horror as the human doctor began emergency surgery. In the middle of the makeshift tunnel, the conditions were terrible. Low gravity, unstable environment, and equipment that had never been designed for Zalathi physiology. This is impossible, Velter whispered. No doctor could perform surgery under these conditions. But Dr. Tanaka was already working. Her hands moved with steady precision as she adapted human surgical techniques for alien biology. She had never operated on a Zalathi before, but she understood the basic principles of their cardiovascular system. The secondary heart has stopped pumping, she explained calmly as she worked. I need to restart it manually and repair the damaged valve. Her voice remained calm and steady, even as she performed surgery that no medical textbook had ever described. She talked to Nemori constantly, keeping the young scientist conscious and calm. Tell me about your coral research, Dr. Tanaka said as she worked. I've always been interested in regenerative biology. Nemori's voice was weak but steady. The coral polyps can regrow entire sections of their body structure. I was studying how they coordinate the regeneration process. That's fascinating, Dr. Tanaka replied, never pausing in her work. Have you considered how that might apply to neural tissue regeneration? As she spoke, her hands continued their precise work. She was using techniques that combine human emergency medicine with her understanding of Zalathi biology. The surgery should have been impossible, but she was making it work through skill and determination. Heart is responding, she announced, restarting now. The secondary heart began beating again, and Nemori's color improved immediately. Her bioluminescent patches began glowing more brightly, and her breathing returned to normal. How did you do that? Dr. Murayat asked in amazement. Practice, Dr. Tanaka replied simply. I've performed emergency surgery in zero gravity and radiation fields during asteroid impacts and in atmospheric storms. This was just another day at the office. But even as she spoke, Dr. Tanaka knew this had been one of the most challenging operations of her career. She had been working with incomplete knowledge on an alien species, in terrible conditions, with improvised equipment. The fact that it had worked was a combination of skill, luck, and determination. The evacuation continued. With renewed urgency, the remaining Zalathi moved through the tube quickly but carefully, helped by Marcus and Alex, who had positioned themselves at key points to assist if needed. All crew evacuated successfully, Marcus reported as the last Zalathi entered the iron will. Beginning tube disconnection, Sarah began the process of separating the ships. This was almost as dangerous as the docking had been, but she managed it with the same steady skill that had gotten them this far. "We're clear," she announced, beginning departure sequence. But as they prepared to leave the rogue planet's gravitational field began to shift again. The forces that had trapped the gentle current were now trying to trap both ships. "Gravitational field is intensifying," Alex reported. "We need to leave now, or we'll be stuck here too," Sarah pushed the engines to maximum power. The iron will strain against the gravitational forces, her hull groaning under the stress. But slowly, steadily, they began to pull away from the rogue planet. "We're free," Sarah announced as they cleared the gravitational field. In the medical bay, the Zalathi crew was recovering from their ordeal. They looked around at the human ship with new understanding. These weren't the monsters they had expected. These were skilled professionals who had risked everything to save the lives of strangers. "How can we ever thank you?" Kesara asked. Sarah smiled. "No thanks necessary. We're just glad we could help," as the iron will jump to hyperspace, carrying the rescued Zalathi toward safety. The crew of both ships knew that something important had changed. The galaxy's view of humans was about to be challenged in ways that no one could have imagined. The medical bay of the iron will had been transformed into something that looked like an underwater paradise. Soft blue lights created the gentle illumination that Zalathi eyes needed, while atmospheric processors hummed quietly, maintaining the perfect mixture of gases. The temperature was carefully controlled to match their homeworld's ocean depths. Chief Science Officer Kesara floated in the specially prepared recovery tank that Dr. Yuki Tanaka had created for her. The human doctor had somehow managed to replicate the exact conditions of a Zalathi medical facility using nothing but cargo ship equipment and improvised materials. "How are you feeling?" Dr. Tanaka asked, checking the readings on her modified instruments. "Much better," Kesara replied, her bioluminescent patches glowing with healthy blue-green light. "I must ask, how did you learn so much about our physiology in just 3 days?" Dr. Tanaka smiled as she adjusted the tank's mineral content. "I've always been fascinated by different forms of life. When I heard about your situation, I studied everything I could find about Zalathi biology. Your species has some amazing adaptations across the medical bay." Nemori was resting comfortably after her emergency surgery. The young scientist watched Dr. Tanaka work with wonder. The human doctor moved with confidence and precision, checking on each Zalathi patient and making small adjustments to their individual care. "Dr. Tanaka," Nemori said quietly, "in all our medical knowledge, we have never seen surgical techniques like yours. How did you know how to repair my secondary heart?" Dr. Tanaka paused in her work. "Honestly, I had to guess at some of it. But hearts are hearts, whether they're human, Zalathi, or from any other species. The basic principles are the same. They pump fluid through the body to keep cells alive." She pulled up a chair next to Nemori's recovery bed. "The interesting thing about your physiology is how your two hearts work together. It's actually more efficient than the human single-heart system. We could learn a lot from studying how your species evolved." Meanwhile, on the bridge, Captain Sarah Chen was sharing coffee with Kesara as senior staff. She had cooled the coffee to a temperature the Zalathi could tolerate and added nutrients that their bodies needed. "This is remarkable," said Velter, the elderly engineer. "You have created a perfect environment for our species using equipment that was never designed for this purpose." Marcus Webb looked up from the engineering report he was writing. "That's what humans do. We make things work, even when they're not supposed to." "But why?" asked Dr. Murad. "Why go to all this trouble for strangers?" "We have heard that humans are aggressive and dangerous," Sarah laughed softly. "We get that a lot. The galaxy thinks we're monsters because we come from a harsh world. But the same conditions that made us tough also taught us to value life. When you grow up on a planet where survival is difficult, you learn that every life is precious. Alex Rodriguez was running final calculations for their course. To the nearest Galactic Council station. We should arrive at Kepler Station in 2 days, he announced. I've already sent word ahead that we're bringing Zalathi refugees who need medical attention. Refugees? Kessara asked with surprise. That's what you are, technically. Sarah explained. Your ship is damaged beyond repair, and you've lost all your equipment. But don't worry, the Galactic Council will take good care of you. Kessara felt a wave of sadness. Their research vessel had been her home for many years. More importantly, they had lost years of research equipment and data. Our neural regeneration research, she said quietly. All of our equipment is gone. It will take years to rebuild our work. Dr. Tanaka looked up from her medical station. Actually, about that, I've been studying the research data you transmitted. It's brilliant work. Have you considered that your neural regeneration techniques might work even better when combined with human medical knowledge? What do you mean? Kessara asked. Human brains are remarkably adaptable, Dr. Tanaka explained. We've developed surgical techniques for treating brain injuries that work under extreme conditions. If we combine your regeneration research with our surgical methods, we might be able to help species that neither of us could treat alone. The idea was revolutionary. Medical cooperation between species was rare in the galaxy. Most races kept their medical knowledge secret, sharing only basic emergency procedures. You would share your medical knowledge with us? Dr. Murad asked with amazement. Of course. Dr. Tanaka replied. Medical knowledge should be shared. The more we know about helping each other, the better we can treat injuries and diseases across all species. Over the next 2 days, as they traveled toward Kepler Station, something unprecedented happened. The human crew and the Zalathi scientists began working together, sharing knowledge and techniques that had never been combined before. Marcus showed Velter how human engineering principles could be adapted for Zalathi technology. The old engineer was amazed by the human approach of making complex systems from simple, reliable parts. Your people think differently about engineering, Velter observed. We design for perfection under ideal conditions. You design for survival under any conditions. That's because Earth doesn't have ideal conditions, Marcus replied. We learned to build things that work when everything goes wrong. Alex taught the younger Zalathi scientists about human navigation techniques. They were fascinated by his ability to calculate complex courses using mental mathematics, an intuitive understanding of gravitational forces. How do you do these calculations without a computer? Asked Nemori. Practice, Alex said. When your ship's computer fails in the middle of an asteroid field, you learn to navigate by feel and instinct. But the most important collaboration was happening in the medical bay. Dr. Tanaka and Dr. Murai were working together to document their combined medical knowledge. They were creating treatment protocols that could help multiple species using techniques from both human and Zalathi medicine. This could revolutionize emergency medicine across the galaxy, Dr. Murai said with excitement. We're creating procedures that work for species with completely different physiologies. As they approached Kepler Station, Kessara found herself thinking about everything that had happened a week ago. She had believed humans were dangerous monsters from a death world. Now she understood that they were something much more remarkable. Captain Chen, she said as they prepared for docking, I need to ask you something. Why did you really come to rescue us? You could have ignored our distress call. Most species would have. Sarah was quiet for a moment, looking out at the stars through the bridge windows. When I was young, my family was trapped and it collapsed. Mine on Luna. The rescue was impossible. The mine was unstable. The air was running out. And the gravity was too dangerous for normal equipment. She turned to look at Kessara, but the rescue teams came anyway. They worked for 3 days in conditions that should have killed them. They saved 47 people, including my family. Sarah smiled. I learned that day that the measure of a person isn't how dangerous their world is, or how strong they are, or what other people think of them. The measure of a person is what they do when someone needs help. As the Iron Will docked at Kepler Station, representatives from multiple species were waiting to greet them. Word had already spread about the impossible rescue and the medical breakthroughs that had resulted from it. But before they disembarked, Cassara made an announcement that would change everything. Attention Kepler Station Control. She said into the communication system, "This is Chief Science Officer Cassara of the Zalathi Research Council. I am officially updating our species contact protocols regarding humans." She paused, looking around at the human crew who had risked everything to save her people. Previous classification: humans, dangerous Deathworlders, avoid contact. New classification: humans, highly recommended rescue specialists when facing impossible situations. These beings will move stars to save lives. The announcement sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Within hours, the story was spreading across all inhabited worlds. The species that everyone feared had become the heroes everyone wanted on their side. Dr. Tanaka began receiving requests from medical schools across the galaxy, asking her to teach combined species emergency medicine. Marcus found himself invited to engineering conferences to demonstrate human problem-solving techniques. But perhaps the most important change was in how species viewed each other. The rescue had shown that cooperation between different forms of life could achieve things that no single species could accomplish alone. As the crew of the Iron Will prepared for their next cargo run, Captain Chen received a message that made her smile. It was from the Galactic Emergency Response Council, offering her crew official positions as multi-species rescue specialists. "What do you think?" she asked her crew. "Sounds like a good job," Marcus said. "Helping people is what we do best." Alex was already plotting courses to systems that needed help. Dr. Tanaka was organizing medical supplies for different species. And in the background, 3 new distress calls were waiting for response. The galaxy had learned something important about the species from the death world called Earth. They weren't monsters to be feared. They were